In 40 years of emergency medicine, I've learned that human creativity knows no bounds, especially when it comes to finding new and innovative ways to injure yourself. Today, I want to tell you about some of the most spectacularly absurd cases I've encountered. Cases that make you question the theory of evolution and wonder how our species ever made it this far. My name is Dr. Thomas Miller, and these are the stories that remind me why emergency rooms exist, not just for accidents, but for the magnificent stupidity of the human condition. Let me start with Gerald Pemberton, age 34, systems analyst, and the proud owner of what was probably the most expensive eyelash repair job in Chicago medical history. It was a Saturday morning in July, the kind of slow weekend shift where you actually have time to drink your coffee while it's still hot. I was reviewing charts when the triage nurse Sandra approached with that particular expression that every ER doctor learns to recognize, the look that says, "You're not going to believe this one." "Dr. Miller," she said, trying to keep her voice professional, "we have a 34-year-old male in bed 3 who, well, he's superglued his eyes shut." I looked up from my charts. "I'm sorry, what?" "He used super glue instead of eye drops. Both eyes, completely sealed." I stared at Sandra for a moment, waiting for the punchline. When none came, I realized she was serious. "How does someone accidentally use superglue instead of eye drops?" "Well," Sandra said, consulting her notes, "apparently he keeps his eye drops and his model airplane glue in the same drawer. He was half asleep, reached for what he thought were eye drops for his dry eyes, and..." She made a small gesture that somehow perfectly conveyed the magnitude of Gerald's mistake. I walked into room 3 to find Gerald sitting upright on the examination table, both eyes sealed shut, with what appeared to be industrial-strength cyanoacrylate adhesive. His girlfriend Tracy was sitting beside him, holding his hand and occasionally muttering, "I told you to organize that drawer." "Good morning, Gerald," I said. "I'm Dr. Miller. I understand you're having some vision problems today." "Doctor, thank God you're here," Gerald said, his voice tight with panic. "I can't see anything. My eyes are completely stuck shut. Am I going to be blind forever?" "Well, the good news is that super glue doesn't penetrate the eye itself," I explained, putting on my examination gloves. "The bad news is that you've essentially created the world's most permanent fake eyelashes." "How long is this going to take to fix?" Tracy asked. "We're supposed to go to my sister's wedding this afternoon." I examined Gerald's eyes more closely. The man had done a thorough job. Both upper and lower lids were completely bonded together with what appeared to be enough adhesive to repair a small aircraft. "Gerald, I have to ask, how much glue did you use?" "I don't know. I thought the eye drops weren't working, so I kept adding more. Maybe half the tube." Half the tube. In 40 years of medicine, I'd seen plenty of unusual cases, but Gerald had managed to achieve something special. He'd created what could only be described as the opposite of eyelid surgery. "Okay, here's what we're going to do," I said. "We're going to use a special solvent to dissolve the adhesive. It's going to take some time, and you need to hold very still. Sandra, can you get me some acetone and the finest forceps we have?" The next 2 hours were perhaps the most ridiculous surgical procedure of my career. Working with microscopic precision, I carefully separated Gerald's eyelids while Tracy provided running commentary on his life choices. "You know, Gerald, this is exactly like the time you tried to fix the garbage disposal with a butter knife," she said. "That was different," Gerald protested. "That was a legitimate repair attempt. You electrocuted yourself and had to call the fire department. Could we focus on my current crisis, please?" As I worked, Gerald regaled me with the series of events that had led to his predicament. Apparently, he was a model airplane enthusiast who had been working late into the night on a particularly intricate World War II fighter plane. When he woke up the next morning, his eyes were dry from the late night, and in his half-conscious state, he'd grabbed what he thought was his bottle of artificial tears. "I didn't realize anything was wrong until I tried to blink," he explained. "Then I tried to open my eyes and nothing. That's when I started screaming. That's when I called 911, Tracy added, though I have to admit my first instinct was to take a picture for social media." "You did not take a picture," Gerald said, alarmed. "I may have taken a picture." "Tracy, it's for posterity. This is the kind of story our grandchildren need to hear." After 2.5 hours of careful work, I finally managed to separate Gerald's eyelids. His eyes were red and irritated, but his vision was completely intact. I prescribed some lubricating drops, clearly labeled and stored separately from any adhesives, and sent him home with instructions to seek immediate medical attention if he experienced any vision changes. "And Gerald," I said as he was leaving, "maybe consider a different hobby, something less adhesive." Now Gerald's case might seem like a one-time fluke, but the truth is, the emergency room is a showcase for human ingenuity when it comes to self-injury. Over the years, I've collected what I like to call my Darwin Award Hall of Fame, cases so spectacularly absurd that they defy explanation. There was Marcus Johnson, 26, who came in with severe burns on his hands and face. The cause? He decided to test whether a lighter was working by holding the flame directly against his palm. Not once, but repeatedly, because the first time didn't really prove anything conclusive. "I wanted to make sure it was really working," Marcus explained, as I applied burn dressing to his hands. "Marcus," I asked, "did you consider testing the lighter on something other than your body?" Marcus thought about this for a moment. "Like what? Paper? A candle? Literally anything that isn't attached to you." "Huh," he said, "that's actually a really good idea." Then there was Beverly Harrison, 42, who managed to get her tongue stuck to a frozen flagpole in the middle of July. Not because she was drunk, not because someone dared her, but because she wanted to see if that thing from the Christmas movie was real. "Beverly," I said as we carefully warmed the area around her tongue, "you know that was a fictional movie, right? But it looked so realistic," she mumbled through her swollen tongue. "It was a Christmas movie with talking Santa toys." The flagpole part seemed scientifically accurate. My personal favorite was Jimmy Rodriguez, 19, who came in with what he described as rocket-related injuries. Jimmy had decided to build a homemade rocket using fireworks, duct tape, and what he optimistically called rocket science principles I learned on YouTube. "So let me get this straight," I said, examining the burns on his arms and face. "You taped 50 bottle rockets together and tried to ride it?" "Not ride it," Jimmy corrected. "I was trying to create a rocket-powered skateboard. Big difference." "Jimmy, what made you think this was a good idea?" "Well, I saw this video where a guy made a rocket-powered bicycle, and I figured a skateboard would be easier to control." "And how did that work out for you?" Jimmy gestured to his singed eyebrows and the small pile of skateboard debris that the paramedics had brought with him. "Not as well as I hoped. The truly remarkable thing about these cases isn't just the creativity involved in the self-injury, but the complete lack of awareness these patients have about the absurdity of their situations. They come into the ER genuinely perplexed about how things went wrong, as if the laws of physics were somehow suspended for their particular experiment. Take Robert Chen, no relation to Amanda from my other stories, 31, who arrived with what could only be described as decorative injuries. Robert had decided to pierce his own ears using a power drill because professional piercings are expensive, and how hard could it be? "Robert," I said, examining the chaos he'd made of his earlobes, "you used a 1/4-inch drill bit. I wanted to make sure the holes were big enough for the earrings I bought." "What kind of earrings did you buy?" Robert proudly showed me a pair of massive hoop earrings that looked like they belonged on a small aircraft. "These are industrial equipment, not jewelry," I said. "They were in the jewelry section at the hardware store." "Robert, you bought these at a hardware store?" "They had the best selection." The infection that Robert had developed required 3 weeks of antibiotics and reconstructive surgery. When he came back for his follow-up appointment, he was wearing a modest pair of studs that he'd purchased at an actual jewelry store. "Much better choice," I told him. "Yeah," Robert agreed, though I have to admit the hardware store ones made more of a statement. But perhaps my all-time favorite Darwin Award winner was Douglas Whitman, 45, who managed to outsmart himself so thoroughly that he created what might be the most elaborate self-inflicted injury in medical history. Douglas was a weekend warrior who had decided to build a backyard obstacle course to improve his functional fitness. The course included rope climbing, tire running, and what Douglas proudly called military-style crawling challenges. "It sounds like a great way to stay in shape," I said, as I examined the complex series of cuts, bruises, and what appeared to be rope burns covering most of his body. "It was going really well until the grand finale," Douglas explained. which was, I set up a zip line from my roof to a tree in my backyard. 20-foot drop, perfectly calculated for maximum adrenaline. I looked at Douglas's injuries more carefully. Let me guess, the calculations were off? No, the calculations were perfect. The zip line worked exactly as designed. Then what happened? Douglas looked embarrassed. I forgot that I'm afraid of heights. You're afraid of heights, so you built a zip line off your roof. I thought the adrenaline would override the fear response, and instead, I panicked halfway down, let go of the handle, and fell into my neighbor's prize-winning rose garden. Douglas had managed to injure himself in ways that required treatment from 3 different medical specialties: orthopedics for his twisted ankle, dermatology for the massive number of thorn punctures, and psychology for what he called zip-line trauma counseling. The neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was surprisingly understanding about her destroyed rose garden. He lands in my flowers at least once a month, she told the paramedics. Usually it's something with his ladder or his home improvement projects. This is actually pretty mild for Douglas. What these cases teach us, besides the obvious lessons about thinking before acting, is something profound about human nature. People don't set out to hurt themselves in ridiculous ways. They genuinely believe that their plans will work, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Gerald thought he was putting in eye drops. Marcus thought he was conducting a scientific experiment. Beverly thought she was testing a movie myth. Jimmy thought he was innovating transportation technology. Robert thought he was saving money on body modification. Douglas thought he was conquering his fears. They were all wrong, spectacularly and painfully wrong, but they were trying. In their own misguided way, they were attempting to solve problems, explore boundaries, and push the limits of what's possible. And that's actually kind of beautiful, in a twisted, medical, emergency-inducing way. The truth is, after 40 years of treating these Darwin Award winners, I've developed a grudging respect for their willingness to try new things, even when those things are fundamentally stupid. They remind me that human curiosity is unstoppable, even when it should probably be stopped. Every time someone comes into my ER with an injury that makes me question the survival of our species, they're also demonstrating the very quality that has made our species successful. The willingness to experiment, to push boundaries, to try things that no reasonable person would attempt. Sure, most of their experiments end badly, but occasionally, very occasionally, someone's ridiculous idea actually works, and that's how we get innovations, discoveries, and progress. Of course, most of the time we just get emergency room visits and really good stories to tell at medical conferences. The key is learning to channel that experimental spirit in safer directions. Gerald now tests his model airplane glue on actual model airplanes instead of his face. Marcus has discovered that there are safer ways to test lighters. Beverly has moved on to testing movie myths that don't involve frozen flagpoles. Jimmy has taken up skateboarding without explosive propulsion. Robert has learned that professional piercers exist for a reason, and Douglas has joined a rock climbing gym where the heights are managed by people who understand safety equipment. They're all still experimenting, still pushing boundaries, still trying new things. They're just doing it in ways that don't require emergency medical intervention. Well, most of the time. Douglas did call me last month to ask if I thought bungee jumping was safer than zip lining. I told him to consult with someone who wasn't legally obligated to treat his injuries. The beautiful thing about Darwin Award winners is that they never give up. They learn from their mistakes, adapt their approaches, and continue trying to make the world a more interesting place. They just do it with a better understanding of physics, chemistry, and the limitations of the human body. And honestly, the emergency room would be a much quieter, much more boring place without them.